Welcome back to Escambia Empires. I am Michael Warner, and this is episode 7. As you can see on video, those of you listening on audio can't see, but I am by myself today. I actually didn't have a guest booked for tonight because I wanted to go over something that's a topic I get a lot of questions about. I feel like I answer this question often, and so I figured I wanted to just do a podcast episode answering just a couple basic questions that I get asked often by my buyers. So what I want this show to be is just 3 things that you should do before going and looking at any houses or going and really house shopping. Everybody likes to start looking on Zillow and they get excited and they find options and, they send me 3 or 4 properties that they want to go see. And really, I would like to just take a step back and make sure that you are prepared before you actually walk in any doors, because the biggest thing that the biggest problem I have with jumping the gun is you get inside a house, you love it, and falling in love with a house that you actually aren't qualified to buy is a big problem. So when you don't have the pre-qualification necessary, or you're shopping outside of your budget range, then those are obvious problems. So the 3 things that I want you to do before you actually go and look at any houses, the first of all is save some money up. You have to have some savings. There's a lot of unknowns in the transaction, but the thing that you can count on most of the time is that you're going to have closing costs and a down payment. Unless obviously you're using a VA loan and you get 0% down, you still are going to have closing costs there. And the closing costs are a lot more than most people think. I tell people probably 3 to 5% of the purchase price you should plan on. Now, if you don't use all of that, that's fine, but that way you're covered in the case of, if you have a lender who charges some extra fees. There's some charge more than others, and that's a topic for a different time. But you have to have a good amount in savings. Say you're buying a house for $150,000, which is, typical for the FHA price range. You're going to need probably a good $7,000 to $8,000 in closing costs. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it's really not that much in the grand scheme of things. And that's in addition to your down payment. So you're talking about, it's easy to spend $10,000 at the closing table to buy a house, which again, I know sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not. So you have to start saving money. You have to have money for a down payment. There is an option. If you get a contract on a house, you can ask for closing costs back from the seller. But in a market like as busy as it is now, that makes your offer much less presentable, much less marketable, much less attractive to a seller when you're asking for closing costs back. And I'll explain that probably in a different video. So rule number 1 is start saving now. And rule number 2 is in tandem with that, work on your credit score. The minimum credit scores for VA and FHA, they're fluctuating kind of often right now for during coronavirus. But you can plan you're going to need somewhere within 600 to 650 minimum. And that's not a great credit score, but a lot of people have credit scores lower than that, and that's okay. But if you're saving and paying off credit cards or whatever debt you have, that'll go up quickly. If you have a credit score that's much lower than that, that's fine. Just take some time, save, pay off some of your debts, and it'll raise quicker than you may think. And there's actually a lot of, credit repair programs or things like that. And a lot of lenders also have good tips on how to increase your credit. That's a more in-depth video, again, for another time. But rule number 2 is work on your credit score. You need to have some savings and you need to have good credit. And the very last thing that you need to be doing before you actually go and start looking at any houses is call a lender. You have to talk with a mortgage professional and they'll tell you what your budget is, what you should be shopping for. You give them pretty much, you can do it verbally over the phone. You give them your financials, you give them some rounded numbers as far as your income, things like that. And they can give you a pre-approval and say, hey, here's how much you're approved for. Here's what your monthly payment is going to be per month. Monthly per month. I know that's redundant. So basically they're going to give you a budget, and then now okay, I should be shopping from 165 to 200 or from 100 to 150. And say if you were looking at houses for 175 and you're approved up to 150, well, now you're going to be disappointed because you were shopping out of your price range, and things in your price range now are not looking so hot. So having said that, the 3 things that you need to be doing before you actually go and look at any houses is saving, working on your credit, and talking to a lender. And once you get pre-approved, call me and we'll go out and start looking at houses. Once you start that process, typically you can find a house and get it under contract and get it closed rather quickly once the process is started. But if you're going through things like, trying to raise your credit, or even things like divorce that take a long time, you should not be looking at houses, because truly you are not qualified to purchase at that point in time. So hope that's been a help to you. If there's anybody who is looking at buying a house, again, those are my 3 things before you start looking at anything, before you talk to a realtor. Save, work on your credit, and talk to a lender. I appreciate your time today, and we will see you next week with the next episode.